keynote speaker known for her many innovative workshops, including the one that is being presented today. Sandra joined Toastmasters 35 years ago and is active in and beyond her clubs. She has mentored 24 members, completed 9 paths, and held all club officer roles, and was a successful club coach and sponsor. Sandra would like you to ask yourself, have you considered intentionally using pathways for a real life reason? Imagine using pathways to tackle a professional, charitable, or personal project that you've been meaning to pursue. Sandra is using her 9th path to build a marketing and branding program, Be Heard, and with her 10th path is working on the launch of her upcoming novel. Today, Sandra will offer practical insights on how to break down your goals into manageable projects, all while working the Toastmasters Pathways educational program. Please give a warm D45 welcome to Distinguished Toastmaster Sandra Savage. Pathways with possibilities.
And if I could get sharing capabilities, let's try that. There we go. I want to start by thinking about why you, and we've been discussing why you first joined Toastmasters all those years ago. For me, it was 35 years ago, and the reason that I joined was someone came up to me in the meeting and said, I'd be your mentor if you joined. And I thought that was the nicest gesture I've ever heard. And then as I've gone through the pathways in the different learning programs, I've been coming up with ways to use the learning, not just for getting over my nerves and jitters and freezing up when I do public speaking, but I also wanted to start to use it in other ways, as have so many of my mentees. I have a young man in Vancouver doing podcasting. That was his goal for his path. I have another lady, she's in LA. She's using motivational strategies for doing broadcasting on YouTube. I used a path to the 8th one, I believe it was, to market my cookbook that I came out with a year ago. A lot of other people in Toastmasters want to go the next level and be paid to be a public speaker. How do you build your platform? And we first used pathways in a club workshop back in California, where we did an elevator pitch workshop instead of an open house. The fire department shut us down. We had exceeded our limit for the largest room on campus. We had to stop registration. We could only take the people who had signed up. And we got 6 new members that night and 3 more over the next few months. So we worked as a team on a path and delivered the elevator pitch workshop. I'm now working with Rotary International for nonprofit initiatives. And in fact, I'm going to use a sample of what you could do for charity in just a moment. And so what is your idea? What do you want to do? What would you like to accomplish? How about we do, now this is so where everybody's eyes shine, a classic car parade, where you buy tickets and you get to ride in my 1940 Ford. I literally have a moonshine car in my garage, and it's bright red and gorgeous. But can you imagine how much fun and how much activity you would get in your neighborhood, in your city, by having something fun to do? And you could collaborate with so many of the other vendors at, say, a spring event. So why don't we do a classic car drive for literacy? Now, how would you start by doing this? For me, I have recently found that ChatGPT, you type in there, how do I put together a custom car show? And you'll get a list that should have popped up but didn't. You can also use Google Scholar. How many of you know about Google Scholar? You're gonna love it, right, Shelley? You get nothing but authorized, confirmed information back. You don't get marketing ads, you don't get misleading, you don't get clickbait. So if you go into Google Scholar, you say, how do I organize a classic car show? And
But do you know that they steal that? You also have to go into your paperwork and check off that they can't take your creative writings and use them in these.
oh, that's good to know.
It's very important because they can take that, and Microsoft can take anything you write and use it in these. And so your creative works are being taken and stolen and plagiarized by others.
But I've had them verify that it was my piece, so I know there's some checks and balances. But when people don't know how to start an activity, here's where you go and get your beginning to-do list. ChatGPT, Google Scholar. You can also open up, say, a book on Amazon.com, see inside and look at their table of contents. Ta-da! You've got your list to start with. And then, of course, you're going to do other things. You're going to interview people who've done something similar before. You're going to talk and get to know your target audience. For me, in my head, I have a mental picture of who I'm talking to when I'm writing out my speeches and workshops and programs. And yes, I was a product manager for Adobe and Macromedia. I knew how to create those really gnarly Gantt charts that we would use to track software. But we always started by looking at the end. And we also looked at what could go wrong. That's a good thing to know, because if you've got an event planned on a day that all of a sudden you get this, what is this that we're all getting, an atmospheric river? Well, that's more on the Pacific side, but you get crazy weather that wasn't predicted. You would never think about this happening in your area. Or what if one of your vendors pulled out, someone who had 6 cars that they were going to have in the parade? Think of all your contingency plans and start to build your to-do list. Then choose a path. Don't choose a path and try to fit an activity to it. Choose what you want to get done, because first of all, that's what you're going to be motivated by. And one of the reasons I chose the classic car show is the first time in 35 years I have my husband interested in Toastmasters, because he's got 4 classic cars in the garage. So choose your path first and choose it upside down. You're not going to get to your final exam in college for, say, understanding statistics without taking the right classes to get to that point. So you have to know what you're trying to achieve. What's the ultimate goal, and then work backwards. I've taken the 6 paths that are moving forward with Toastmasters, and I've separated them into 3 columns. The me ones are projects that you can do all by yourself. You do not need to work with a team. We is a group, and lead is more formal. So for the me, the 3 paths that are going forward that you can do all by yourself because you're shy and you don't know how to work with people yet. You'll get there. Presentation mastery, visionary communications, and engaging humor. By the way, I'm never going to do that path. We are things where you work with a team for a project or an event. But lead is something that you're going to lead indelible. It's going to be something you can pick up and do over and over again. You could write it up as like a club succession plan. You could write a succession plan for the next person who's going to run the classic car parade. And you have a project that lasts 6 months. So choose first by level 5. Then look at your level 4, persuasive influence, motivational strategies, and dynamic leadership. For this presentation, I challenged myself to say, what if we had 3 people in my Toastmasters club that wanted to do this classic car parade, but one's still in the middle of persuasive influence, or that's what they want to work on, or one's personality fits really good with motivational strategies, and then you got your project manager and cheerleader all wrapped into one in dynamic leadership. How could you use people in different paths to work on the same project? very easy. And then you have got your level 3 projects. So what I would say is start with your to-do list and figure out what has to be done. And then find out from each person which one they want to do. Now, we all have to do all these cards in white. These are our required projects. Level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4, 5, and the conclusion, reflect on your path. Now you pick out your electives. Well, what elective do I need to know? Well, how am I going to get in contact with someone at City Hall to give us a permit to be in this event? How are we going to connect with somebody else who we can bolster their booth and they can bolster ours? So you get to know your do some networking and and then what happens when things change? You have to do change management. So you're going to look at all your to-dos, and every one of these paths, you have to do 17 paths to get your completion, and then you do your electives from there. So you've got a good number of projects for everyone on your team to work on and give speeches about when they get up and give speeches. And I'm going to give you some creative ideas, by the way, for that. And then just put the other ones that you don't need or don't want to use or don't fit into your project to the side. You may choose to bring them back in, but let's leave them to the side for now and pick out the ones that have to be done. And then you say, this one's for Mary, this one is for Johnny, and this one is for Joyce. And you divvy up your projects so that you've got enough to complete your path and your project together. This is a great team leadership skill, being able to delegate tasks and figure out who would grow the most from doing it or has the credibility and can teach us. For me, a successful Toastmasters meeting is where I learn something, and it's not about your cat. I don't care about your cat. That isn't going to make me any smarter. I'm sorry, Shelley. Isn't going to make me any smarter or articulate or inspired. When you give a speech, your speech should have a purpose. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. But you can also use your projects creatively. For example, writing a speech with purpose. And many of you have seen my speech writing workshop where I put on my chef jacket and we're going to whip up a 5-layer cake and you're going to have sticky fingers to remember things by. And if you haven't had that workshop, I'll give you my contact information at the end so that you can contact me for this or many of the workshops I have. Mentoring happens to be my favorite. And Andrea, I'm sorry I didn't update it. I'm up to 25. I have a new mentee over in Italy. So it's a great way to get to know people all over the world and also find out what's slang. Americans love our slang, and it doesn't translate well or favorably in some countries. So be careful with that. Private conversation with me on that. But use your speech writing with a purpose. And a lot of people, I suggest, when they're working on a goal, if their purpose is literacy, then write a speech on literacy right from the very beginning. And then when you do your, I'm going to skip ahead to icebreaker. When you do your icebreaker, you're going to say why that's important to you. Why is childhood literacy important? And start with a story. I went to school with a boy whose mother and dad didn't have time to read to him every night. And he didn't gain the love of literature until he was way past the age where he couldn't keep up with the class. He wasn't meeting standards. Start with a story. I also have a challenge for you. Start each of your speech knowing that the first 8 words count the most. And don't use the word I in those first 8 words. The speech is for your audience, not for you. You already know it. Your job in a speech is to pass it on. Inspire, educate, inform, persuade. Get good at writing speech introductions, and I have a worksheet for you on that too. How to write a speech introduction of 100 words. When I write a speech, using my Writing This Speech with Purpose, the first thing I do is I write down what's my goal. Why am I writing this speech? Why? Who needs to hear it and why? And why now? That's your speech introduction. Let your Toastmaster of the day pump you up, not you getting up and speaking your own accolades. In your icebreaker, talk about why your cause is so important to you. The mentoring project at level 2. Work with your VPE to make sure it's okay, but go get a mentor on classic cars or on working with city council. Get somebody who's done that before, you're expert, and ask them to mentor you for so many hours, and then give a speech about what the mentor taught you or how working with a mentor saved you time. Don't talk about being mentored. In Toastmasters, talk about mentoring in general, and it's specific to your goal. In level 2, also your communication and leadership style. Don't talk about how it is now. Who cares? I want to know how you want to develop your communication style, how you're going to develop your leadership style. You can talk about which ones work best for certain activities, but talk about what you want to become better at in your speaking and leading. Social speeches, I mentioned in another group, we have in one of the clubs I'm in, when a new member joins the club, we set them up with a buddy before if they ask for a mentor, that's down the line, but just a buddy, someone to help them with especially if you're a home club where you have people coming in with no knowledge of Toastmasters, interview them, have the buddy interview the new member, and then the next meeting, have the buddy get up and give a 3-minute speech on the new member. I mean, wouldn't it feel good to have someone talk about you instead of you having to inflate your own ego? Have someone interview you and introduce you to the club proudly, and then everybody will know more about you. So that's one way to use a social speech. You can also use a social speech at the end to thank the person from the industry, not from Toastmasters, that mentored you and helped you on your goal. So there's lots of different ways to use your social speeches. Did you know that creating visual aids could be all your branding and your logo and your tagline for your event? Do that instead of showing how you can use PowerPoint or Canva or something else. Talk about how you developed your branding and all your things, and show them the visual aids. What are you going to use on social media? What are you going to use in the newspaper if you're going to buy an ad? Does anybody do that anymore? I don't think so. How you're going to create all your flyers, your branding when people go out and meet people in person to get them to sign up to come. And my favorite project in the whole Pathways is researching and presenting. This is where not only if you're going to say something quite remarkable, like some wild fact, that you can cite it so you don't look like you're a crazy man, but it's also where you could get some facts to help you persuade people and be able to communicate those facts. And as a writer, I'm sorry, but we all know if you're a writer, you go down the research rabbit hole and you never come out. Yeah, right, Sharon? I love researching. I've learned so much about the Korean War and the Navy, and it actually encouraged me to go into the Navy for 2 weeks and be a guest chef instructor just so I could have the Navy experience. And it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Now, my personal opinion, and I think most of us agree, is where we get our return on investment in Toastmasters is feedback. None of us has a problem criticizing a commercial, do we? You sit down, you watch TV and you go, why did they use that song? Or why did they use a woman with that high squeaky voice? We are natural critics. But we walk in the door of a Toastmasters meeting and all of a sudden we're nice. Well, stop that. Stop it. I want feedback. I don't want to go after 35 years in Toastmasters and get the exact same feedback as someone who gave their icebreaker. Nice speech. Thank you for talking about blah, 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 blah. I want specifics. I want suggestions. And there's so many ways to do that. But here's my criteria, and you might want to write this down. First of all, those first 8 words, did they hook you? Are you going to remember, if nothing else, either the beginning or the conclusion? The beginning is what gets you involved, gets you to lean in, pull out a piece of paper and a pencil. Can you paraphrase the speech? The first meeting I went to, I still remember the first speech I heard. In fact, I tell it all the time. It's a Stephen Covey story, but I've only heard it once. I've told it probably 100 times. And it changed my whole world of thinking, of accepting people. It's so important that your speech is remembered not only long enough to give the evaluation, but after the meeting, 7 days after the meeting, 7 weeks after the meeting, 7 years. That's when you know you've made a difference in your speech. And if that's not what you're trying to do when you communicate, then set your goals higher. Be something memorable. And make sure people know why you're speaking. I'm going to tell you and persuade you to brush your teeth 3 times a day instead of just once. Tell them what your expectations are. And as an audience member, you should know what their intention was. Was it to educate? Was it to persuade me? And could you point out what the key message was? If anything, can you say in 8 words what Andrea just spoke about? Okay. These are your memorable, indelible moments that you want to get across. And they are supported by having good speech organization, having a good combination of using your voice and your body as other words that don't take up your words in your speech. And by the way, most of us speak 85 to 100 words per minute. So when you write out your speech, and I write out all of my speeches, if you're doing a 7-minute speech, no more than 700 words, because you want to leave time in there for some good pausing. And was there a single good conclusion? Not a and then and finally and in conclusion. No, you get one. Okay. Can you tell what kind of mom I was? You only get one. Okay, now here's some winning tips when doing your project, your goal, and pathways. Do the math. You've got 17 speeches that you have to get to minimally conclude a path, complete a path. If your club only meets once a month and you have so many members, how often are you going to get to speak? If there aren't enough, there are plenty of you out there who are looking for speakers to fill your agenda. And there's a WhatsApp chat site called Happening Now. And they will put up that they have a meeting happening and they need a role player. If you've got that going on your computer or on your cell phone, you'll find speaking opportunities. And ask other Toastmaster clubs, can I come and give a speech? Because you're storytellers or you're people who talk about food, or there's so many specialty clubs. ask and more importantly, be open for that feedback. This is your dress rehearsal in Toastmasters. If you're gonna go in front of the city council next week, wouldn't you like to have practiced your speech by people who are intelligent and know what to look for? Ask for that honesty. You need it. And if your speech is really bad, before you go in front of the city council, practice it again with another club. You can do your speeches in your order, not level 1, level 2, level 3, and do them in order down the page. You can mix and match them to match your calendar. And what I did when Pathways first came out is I got a 12-month calendar, the kind that hangs up on the wall. And I put on there what speeches I had to give on what dates. And then I met with my VPE and scheduled them all in advance. And there's nothing like the peer pressure within yourself that admits defeat and goes to the VPE and says, oh, I'm not ready. No, we don't want to do that. We have the dates. We want to get this project done. We're going to keep our word. But you can do them out of order. You can only file them in Basecamp by level in order. That's the only restriction on that. And you know what? You don't have to do 17. You can do all 45. If you're an overachiever, do them all. Do the ones you need to get your goal accomplished and schedule to finish. Not only what speeches you're going to give every month, but what are your milestones? In project management, we often have to have when I worked for Adobe, we had to have the packaging design done by a certain date to get the boxes printed back in the days when software came on CDs. The box is ready. You know, we had to have this date for all of our brochures to be ready for the trade show we were going to announce at. We had to go on press tour so many months beforehand to have our article hit at the right time. So look at the milestones, the dates that are unmovable, and work towards those. That will help you do the whole project and know that you're matching those dates, important dates to keep on track. And then very important to do after, especially if you're working with a team on a project, is do a postmortem. What went right? What could we have changed? What went terribly wrong? There's your reflect on your path. And the reason I enjoy when someone does a reflect on their path is not what they learned, but what they botched, what they made their boo-boos on. So that I get to hear from them where the potholes are in the road. I know what to avoid, what to do more, put more time on. It's that aha moment that you learn in doing a project, a goal, not a path. So that is what I wanted to talk to you about is, you know, you've got all of you have goals for the coming year. And there's no end to the ideas of things that you can do. Set your goal and then get it done. Do we have time for any questions? Okay, anyone? Sharon, would you point out hands as you see them, or someone point out hands?
Absolutely. Sharon Allen.
Sharon.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the presentation, Sandra, a lot of really good information. I'm wondering if you could clarify though, when you said that working a path, there could be different people doing different parts of it, but that wouldn't complete the path for any one individual, correct?
Well, there are in each path a required 3, 4, and 5 that are all different.
Okay, then.
Okay, all of your level 1s are the same, but you all have to give them.
Yes.
So you figure out what you have to 100% do to finish your path. But if you're more of a logistical person, your speech on something that works towards your goal will be totally different than someone's speech on how to do effective aids, if we're just looking at level 3. So look at dividing the workload. Doing the ones you have to do, and then divide the workload amongst you, either by volunteering or being voluntold. And then you work on that. So if you were to think about a workplace project that you're going to do for your job, and you're divvying it up, traditionally it would be divided up by what team you're on. If you're in engineering, if you're in marketing, if you're in quality assurance, if you're in the legal department, the job would be divided up by the people who have the expertise. Or you could divide it up by encourage them to learn something that they don't normally do. So it's all up to you on how you want to divvy up the projects. But all of you have to do 17 speeches.
So in reality, then, let's say, because we're doing this based on a specific project, I could be doing, say, doing an option from a different path than someone else, but yet we're going to achieve the project.
Exactly.
Okay.
Say that again. That's exactly what I've been trying to figure out how to say. What was it? Sharon?
I love you
That-
guys. But we're over on the agenda. I see more hands because Sandra did such an amazing job. Sandra, would you mind? I mean, up to you. Is there a way people can get in touch with you to continue discussing?
Yes, I will put my contact information in the chat. And if you contact me, I'll give you all the resources for I have all the PDF files for every single project in the 11 paths in Toastmasters. I have the Pathways catalog and the cards and a couple cheat sheets on how to write a speech introduction. So I'll put my contact information in the chat. Just contact me if you'd like to get any resources.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure I can see, I saw 4 more hands. So I have a feeling people will be